Couple of guys at middleweight that definitely need big wins in a big way. We have new Mansa, Joaquin Buckley, taking on Antonio Arroyo. And in this fight for Joaquin Buckley, he has to have a little bit of solace, right? Because the circle of wild, viral kick knockouts just continues to go. He knocks out Impa Kasanganay. And then he gets knocked out by Alessio Di Chirico. And then Alessio Di Chirico gets head kick knocked out. Or at least it was shin, knee, whatever it was. But for Joaquin Buckley, it's weird and it's a little concerning because he's only 27, but he continues to lose by knockout. He's got, 3 knockout losses on his record, 1 in his debut against Kevin Holland. But we give him a little bit of slack because he came in on short notice and it was a really tricky fight and he had a little bit of success in that one. Then he's able to get wins over Impa Kasanganay, wild one. Knocks out Jordan Wright, wild one. And then he gets knocked out by Alessio Di Chirico about 7 months and 2 weeks ago. You like it because it was a while ago. It's not like he got knocked out 2 months ago. But hey, sometimes guys get knocked out like Julian Erosa, come back and finish Charles Jourdain. What do I know? All I do know is that for Antonio Arroyo, I don't know what this guy does well. I mean, it's like that clip from Saturday Night Live, Main Justice.
That's right, son. I want you about smarting off, and I don't know if you get what you is.
Does he know what he is? Like, for Antonio Arroyo, seriously. The guy, they talked about him for ages. He replicates Thiago Santos in the gym. He's this tall body at 185 that can switch stance. He can kick. And then he goes in there and fights Andrea Muniz. And fights a boring fight. Muniz, we got to put some respect on his name. You more so than anybody else in this world. But Andrea Muniz, we know now, he's legit. He's a ranked fighter at middleweight. So then Arroyo goes in there and he fights Duran Win. What do you got to do when you fight Duran Win? Don't play Duran Win's game. Don't get taken down. Matt, in that fight, boom, boom, we go and look at the numbers, and oh boy, Duran Win went 12 of 16 on his takedown attempts. Arroyo had success when he struck with him, and then he just played a stupid, boring, I'm going to let this happen game, and I've never been more upset in my life. It has to be said, that was at a special catch weight of 195 pounds. That's why you see that in front of you on your screen. And for Arroyo, he's had bookings that have fallen out. You look at it so far in the UFC. He's supposed to fight Tom Breeze back in June. The fight fell out. Breeze had some complications, some issues, so he didn't get that fight. But for Arroyo, I look at the physical gifts, I look at the bill of sales that I was promised, and I didn't get what I was promised, and I have this guy in front of me that's 32, and I have no friggin' clue when he's going to turn on. It's like Keith Richards, and I'm just waiting for him to start up, and then he just doesn't start up, and he's like an old lawnmower.
There's just a lot to talk about when you want to talk about Antonio Arroyo. Antonio Arroyo reminds me of this one blind date I was on where I had this one friend and she was like, oh, you're really going to like this other friend that I have. She's the total package. She has a lot going on. And then I showed up and her friend was kind of like Antonio Arroyo, much more disappointing than the initial sales pitch. So for Antonio Arroyo, you hear the Thiago Santos in the gym. You hear about what could be. But at the end of the day, Antonio Arroyo's 2 years away from being 2 years away. That's just the problem. I don't look at his skill set, and I don't look at it as being a skill set for MMA. Now, just let me expand on that a little bit. You need more than just one way to win in MMA. We all know this. MMA is an extremely offensive-oriented sport, so if you have a really good offense, that's good. But you need more than you can't be one note, for instance. Antonio Arroyo can beat you if he catches you with a counter strike on your way in. That's pretty much it. He hasn't shown the ability to go out there and volume strike with guys for a consistent 15 minutes, and he also hasn't even really shown that power in the octagon either.
Well, and for Arroyo, it was like, okay, this guy's a dynamic striker. Picture him before he came into the UFC. He's 9-2. Comes into the UFC, dynamic striker, big submission win coming in over Steven Regman.
Built like a Greek god.
You like to see all these things, but I think it was like, oh, I submitted a guy, so that's a possibility. We can play around on the ground a little bit. And hey, he didn't get submitted by Andrea Muniz. Jacare Souza can't say that.
It's like when Tito Ortiz knocked out Chuck Liddell in their third fight, do you think after that he was like, damn, my hands, I've got good power. Let's wait a year and a half and take on Anderson Silva. There's the comp.
Boy, but yeah, I look at this one for Arroyo, training at a Jackson Wink MMA, Marajao Brothers team that he has spent time with in Brazil. There's definitely things to look forward to if he's training with the John Jones of the world. And who else? The Devin Clark, who's also in this card. Little bits and pieces that he can gain, especially in a fight against Joaquin Buckley. I think for Buckley, he has to kind of make the fight boring, because if he tries to be too exciting, you get de-Chirico'd.
I'm gonna disagree a little bit. I think Buckley can have success in the boxing exchanges in this fight. Buckley's weird because not a lot of guys have a peekaboo style in MMA, but I would say that is how Joaquin Buckley strikes. He's not even much of a kickboxer, although yes, I know he has probably the greatest kick highlight of all time. Most of his success does come from his hands. He's a guy who, it's almost weird how he uses footwork. He steps through his opponent to throw his power, and when Buckley does land with his hands, he has great hand speed for the division. He's a little bit undersized, like frame-wise, he doesn't really fit the division all that well. Just be interesting to see if he ever does move up or down in weight. But I do think Buckley can have success with his hands in this fight. I do think he has much higher hand speed than Antonio Arroyo, and I do think that once he gets on the inside, he can capitalize on that fact. Arroyo will have success because, again, with that peekaboo style, you can get caught with uppercuts and knees. I know Kiriko head kicked Buckley, but it was in large part due to his ducking action. He ducked into that head kick, and it caught him a little bit early, almost. So I do think that Joaquin Buckley is weird. The highs are very high, but the lows are very low, and I still think that I don't even know. I still think Joaquin Buckley on his worst day could probably beat Antonio Arroyo. There you go.
So right now, the circle of kicks, Abdulrazak Alhassan's up at the top.
Yeah.
Can Joaquin Buckley get there and then fight Abdulrazak Alhassan? I'd be cool with that fight.
It's kind of like if you want to talk about Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, and Dirk Nowitzki. Now, these are all great players, and none of the other ones are. But Joaquin Buckley can kind of be like Kevin Garnett. Like, your peak could be better than the other ones. It's just going to be a lot shorter. You know, his highlight's the best, but I doubt that it's going to stand out the most at the end of his UFC career. I think this is one of those get Buckley back on track kind of fights. We've seen this before. Sean O'Malley just fought Chris Mutino. It happens, guys. So yeah, I think Joaquin Buckley's going to be able to get back on track.
Antonio Arroyo open to plus 165 underdog. He's at a plus 175 right now. Buckley open to minus 190, roughly a minus 220 on best fight odds, Matt. The overall picks over on Tapology, 1,070 votes, 89% Buckley, 81% by knockout. It's like that 21 Pilots song. I don't believe the hype. That's a lot of people going with him by knockout. 11% have Arroyo, 23% by submission, 42% by knockout, 28% by decision. If that math made sense, I don't believe it did. I have Joaquin Buckley in this fight because I haven't seen it from Arroyo. I've seen him get out grappled by a great wrestler. But he played that game. We saw him in the striking exchange. It was like he had the smile on his face. It was like, man, I'm coy. I got this. And then he lost.
It's when Adesanya fought Jan Blachowicz. If you go back and rewatch that fight, Jan Blachowicz is having success on the feet, but the success Adesanya is having isn't really offensive success. He's making Jan Blachowicz bite on his feints, which is great, but the problem is, if you don't follow those feints up with strikes, you're not scoring with anything as a result. Antonio Arroyo will feint quite a bit, and he does, like you said, he looks really happy when he's on the outside striking, but the problem is, he never puts anything together on the outside. I really don't think he's going to be able to catch Buckley on the way in when Buckley does try to duck in for an overhand. I do think Buckley's going to be able to catch him with a big shot.
I met my wife at Fredericton Ribfest in 2015. I will go with a Ribfest selection of Joaquin Buckley, and not the blind date at Dairy Queen with Antonio Arroyo. Matt, you're in agreement here?
It wasn't Dairy. The date cost a lot more money than just Dairy Queen, unfortunately.
Wasn't Dairy Queen. Both of us going with Joaquin Buckley in this one to right the ship and get the win. Let us know down below in the comments section if you understood any of the references and who you have for a pick in this fight between these middleweight slobberknockers, I guess? Maybe.
Strikers. We'll leave it at that.
15 fights on the card. Anthony Smith, Ryan Spann up at the top that you're not going to want to miss. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say.
Let's get into it.